Well, hello everyone. We are about to start. Give me some minutes to finish off this logistic thing. And you can see a beautiful face that is joining us today. And I'm going to introduce her shortly. I just want to get people in through our section. Okay. All right. Well, welcome everyone. My name is Daniel Nomolola. I'm one of the founding members of Authentic Life 360. And our goal is very simple. We want to educate people to live a meaningful life because life, and I know that is subjective because it depends on every individual, but we want to try as much as possible to give you the tools that you need to lead that. And we know if you look at our logo, it has three circles. And one is solid circle, and the other one is you know, not solid, and then we want to journey upward. So the more we journey upward, the more we reflect the character of our Creator, who is our God, and the more we can share in His life. And one of those things that we want to talk about today is our body. Your body, this physical body. We want to make sure that you learn how to take care of it, and talk about food. In terms of eating. And with me today is Uyimen, if I get it right. I call her UI, so not UI, but UI. And she can give us a correct pronunciation of her name. She is a speaker, a certified intuitive eating counselor, and non-diet nutrition coach. And she's a mom of three. She is committed to providing compassionate, holistic, evidence-based nutrition care to mothers and their families worldwide through our virtual nutrition coaching practice and podcast, the Thriving Mom podcast. And I believe she's going to speak a little bit more about it and how you can join her to learn more because she's just going to give us a snippet of what she does and what we can gain from it. She's passionate about helping people, especially those who are busy, moms who are overwhelmed, and to transform their relationship with food so that they can stop obsessing about food, gain freedom, and feel empowered to raise children who have a good relationship with food and their body. I love that. And that's what drew me to her. I like to eat, but most of the food that I like to eat are like what I say, they don't declare them healthy. So, sometimes you feel this guilt of, I shouldn't be eating this. So she's going to speak to that today. In addition to it, when she's not busy, you will find UI so that I can't actually mispronounce your name. Painting and taking care of our plant babies or napping. This is good. And it said here, it says, which is one of our favorite things to do. So I don't really know which one, whether it's painting or taking care of our plant babies or napping. I don't know which one she wants to do. So so today we want to introduce and invite her to join us. And if you have any questions, please feel free to ask her. I don't know. She's going to tell us how she wants it to be done. But welcome here, UI. I'm glad that we were able. I've not seen her for a long time now, because she moved on us. She moved to somewhere out of Winnipeg. And welcome here. I think you are muted if you want to unmute yourself. So welcome
Yeah,
here, and
thank you very
well,
much.
let's enjoy your presentation.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Uime Oguta. As I've been introduced, I'm a mom, I'm a wife, and also an intuitive eating counselor and non diet nutrition coach. So I'm really passionate about helping people have a good relationship with food and their bodies because I know how complicated things are. And I'm really excited to be here to just share this message with everyone. I'm hoping that by the end of this presentation, you will have some questions and some thoughts that you could think about. And then hopefully that'll help you and support you. So I will go ahead and share my screen because I have a presentation. And please feel free to ask any questions you may have in the chat. I think that's going to be monitored. So if you have any questions, and I'm also going to be taking questions at the end as well. So like I said, all of that. And I also host a weekly podcast. It's called the Thriving Mom Podcast. So on my podcast, because I do one-on-one coaching, my podcast is really just a simple way that people can still get to hear this message for free. Wherever you listen to podcasts, it's on there. And we talk about simplifying nutrition. We talk about self-care for moms. We talk about feeding kids, which I know is a big one for a lot of moms and families. And even if you're not a mom, if you know a mom, if you live around a mom, it's a very helpful podcast because when we know better, we can support our moms and help them to also thrive in life. So I will go ahead and say, I'm sure a lot of you are here because you care about your health and we want to do the right thing. But if we're really being frank, a lot of the things that we knew growing up or the things that we think we know, they're very questionable. And because of all the information that's out in the world, in the media, what we see, we're questioning a lot of that. And nutrition information tends to be really complicated. This is why, or one of the reasons why I decided that I would take the leap and start supporting moms. Because first of all, I'm a mom. And secondly, when you're a mom, you're responsible for taking care of the kids and helping them, supporting them on their food journey. But as well, your body goes through a lot of changes and nobody really talks about that, how that relates to food. And of course, if you have a partner, there's also that added pressure of trying to satisfy that person when it comes to the foods that you're cooking or the meals that you're making available in your home. So this is one of the things that really drew me to go into this field and try to take on a little bit more to support moms. And of course, there's so much nutrition information, there's so much noise. And it's like the more you learn, the less you know. So like Daniel already said at the beginning, it's like you eat these foods and you feel guilty or you feel ashamed because that's not the messaging that you're hearing. So I'm here to offer you some help and some support, and hopefully you'll feel a lot less stressed by the end of this session. So before we go on, there's a cycle that a lot of us go through, and I want to bring that up front and admit that this can be a really vulnerable conversation to have. Again, so many of us think we know what we should do, but we're not able to do it. And that brings a lot of shame, that brings a lot of fear and stress and anxiety to us. So I really want you to know that this is a safe space. And if you hear anything that makes you start to question, then maybe it's a good time to start to think perhaps what you knew up until now was not really supporting you. And if you feel yourself start to resist, I would invite you to sit with it, think about it a little bit more, and ask yourself, why am I resistant to this information? Everything I do is evidence-based. I'm trained in nutritional sciences with dietetics. So I don't, I would say a lot of my information is evidence-based. I really pay attention to the research, but I also know that we live in a world where the research doesn't always apply to everybody because a lot of the research is limited when it comes to demographics. So just something to keep in mind. Now, there are a lot of us that go through this cycle of trying to control our eating because we've been told that's the way it's supposed to be. In order to live healthy and look healthy, this is what you have to do. A lot of that messaging comes with trying to control our bodies. So for a while, we might get into this restrictive way of eating where we're picking the foods that we choose to eat. We're not allowing our kids to have things like candy or juice because there's research that says candy can affect them this way, or someone sends you information that talks about sugar is addictive. So you try to control that. And then for a while, we feel like we're doing very well because we're relying on our willpower to support us, to keep us through. But that only lasts for long because we weren't meant to live using our willpower. We don't have the power to control our bodies. And that's when we get into trouble because when we're tired, we just decide, well, you know what? I give up. I don't want to do this anymore. I'm just going to go ahead and do everything else that I said I wasn't going to. So then we start eating, bringing back all the foods that we were restricting. We start not caring about our bodies. And of course, we get back into that cycle where we feel guilty, we feel ashamed, and we feel like a failure. So then yet again, we decide, well, I promise I'll do better. And we get back on that cycle and try to control ourselves. So that's what I call the diet cycle. It's this idea where we're sold the desire to lose weight. And then we use food, we restrict our foods, we exercise. And then we get into this cycle of where we lose weight for some of us who are looking to lose weight and we feel happy. But over time, again, those feelings of deprivation and intense cravings, because we're relying on willpower, they get really intense that we can't just control anymore. So we start to react, and we bring everything else back. The guilt and shame starts, and you go back around the cycle. Now, this cycle is really sneaky because we're not really sure why this happens, but I'm hoping that if you find yourself in this space, you will figure out why it's happening. And one of those reasons is because there's a $67 billion industry, which is called the diet industry, that controls this. There's an industry out there that is saying everyone needs to look this way. And usually that's a thin, white female. That's the way they're telling you need to look. So a lot of us have this issue when we see this and it doesn't reflect who we are. We don't see how we can ever become that way. But then the diet industry keeps telling you, if you just eat this way, if you just exercise this much, you'll end up here. And then many of us end up with the thought that our bodies are broken and we don't have discipline and we don't have willpower, which are all true, which are all false. And those are not truths based on God's word. So I really want us to think about this diet cycle as we continue talking. Just think about where this might be for you. The truth is that our deeply rooted issues cannot be fixed by diets and restrictive exercises. That's the truth. The deeper issues that we're looking for solutions for, they can't be fixed by all these actions. Granted, physical activity is good, eating well is good. But what a lot of us are looking for is not in any of those things. So I want to share 3 common things that I find among my clients and among a lot of people. So I think maybe as I'm going through this, you can think about where you might be on that scale or which of those applies to you. We'll talk about those deeply rooted issues, and then I will give you some action steps and some questions that you can start to think of as we go through this. Because my hope and my prayer is that as you listen, you're open to learning, but also unlearning some of the things that you may have believed. Because at the end of the day, we're all seeking freedom. We're all seeking to become children who are really chasing purpose. And we can't do that when we're busy held by the shackles of restrictive eating patterns and over-exercising. So one of the first reasons is that we're seeking belonging. So now imagine yourself going somewhere, you walk into a room, and someone had invited you there, and you walk into that room, but as you open the door, you don't recognize anyone in there. What are the feelings that start to come to your body? Chances are you'll start to feel nervous. You'll start to feel anxious. You'll start scanning the crowd, trying to find who is someone that looks like me. Okay, if no one looks like me, is there someone looking at me? Maybe if someone is smiling at me. You just want a place where you can feel like, okay, this is where I can find myself. So we see that in tribes, people living in the same place, people sharing the same meals, people cooking the same way, dressing the same way, listening to the same kind of music. We see that in sports teams, especially for the men. You have your favorite sports team, whether it's in basketball, in soccer, whatever it is. When you see that uniform of your team, there's something about it that makes you happy. You feel like, yes, these are my people. And this is a basic need of humanity. Ever since time immemorial, we've always wanted to live with our own people. Now, we live in a global village, which is the world. So a lot of us are traveling away from home. We're traveling further away. We're staying longer from where we consider home. And that means that a lot of us are also finding ourselves lost. For myself, I moved to Canada 2003. That's almost 18 years now. And when I came, I moved to a small town in Alberta, Grand Prairie, and there weren't a lot of Black people there. So you can imagine the shock to us as children, as students who came. We couldn't find our food. We couldn't find things that we were familiar with. Now, fast forward 18 years later, we have a lot more immigrants in Canada. We have a lot more people who look like me. We have a lot more stores selling foods that are familiar to me. I feel a lot more relaxed. And I'm sure anyone coming to Canada or moving to the Western world feels a lot more relaxed because there are more things that you can see that make you feel like you belong. Now, going back to the diet industry, there's this idea that you have to look a certain way again in order to be healthy. You have to be thin. You have to be within a certain number range, which is the BMI, in order to be considered healthy. So then we're pursuing that at all costs so that we can feel accepted, so that we can feel like we belong. For so many of us, that is tied to the food that we eat. So we base our worth on the food. The problem with that is when you base your worth on the food that someone else dictates for you, what happens when you can no longer afford it? What happens when you go outside the norm? That's when the guilt and the shame starts to come in. You feel guilty. Oh, I shouldn't be eating this. Some of us might hide. So let's say you live in a place where everybody else says, oh no, let's not eat rice, which is a big one for a lot of my clients. Let's not eat rice. So then you don't want to eat the rice, but then you hide. And then when you go out to a party where it's outside your home, you start eating rice like you haven't seen rice before. The rice has always been available, but it's because you're trying to fit this standard that tells you that rice is unhealthy. So then you forgo the rice that is familiar to you. I had a situation the other time with one of my friends who decided she wanted to go on a diet, and the diet required that she couldn't eat white rice anymore. So she decided she'll eat brown rice. Now, she decided to eat brown rice. Where we live, I live in Canada's Northwest Territories, which is way up north for some of you that are not familiar. Where we live, brown rice is expensive. And then not only was it brown rice, it had to be brown basmati rice, which is even more expensive and inaccessible where we live. Now you can imagine rice that may go for about, I don't know, $7 in an 11 kg bag, or I may totally just be getting the price wrong here, but it's way cheaper than this 20-something dollar bag of tiny rice. And now she can't have jollof rice because she doesn't know how to cook basmati brown rice with jollof. She can't eat it with sauce because it's so dry. She now has to spend all her energy trying to find new recipes to cook at 42 years old. Not that she's too old to learn. The issue is she's learned to depend on rice for all her life growing up in Africa. And now she has to change all of that. And let's not forget that there are some feelings that come along with eating rice. For so many people, rice is comfort. So that's been taken away now because she's trying to fit a standard. But the problem is these standards are set by humans. So today someone will tell you this is the good food that you should be eating. And in a few years, that changes. And I'll tell you my story coming up in a bit. But if I want you to look at this photo, what are the thoughts that come for you when you look at these photos of food? You know, you've got your vegetables, you've got some nuts and seeds, you see fruits, you see salmon, avocado. Right away, your brain is happy. It's like, oh, yeah, this is good. Think about the time when you eat foods like this, where you consider those foods are good. You probably think, yeah, I'm disciplined. I have self-control. I'm a good person. Now think about these. What's the first thing that comes to your mind? A lot of us, that might be, whew, that's bad. That's addictive. So some of us will think, I'm so terrible. I'll never stop eating all these foods. I don't need to have them in my house. And I talked about how some of us might be hiding. This is one thing that I always talk to my parents about, the moms that I coach. When we start to restrict foods and your child starts to hide candy, if your child displays that when they're hiding candy or cookies, know that you're restricting them. And they're hiding because we've labeled these foods bad foods. Again, this is completely normal. So I don't want you to feel guilty or feel bad about feeling that way, but I just want you to bring awareness to these behaviors. Because again, a lot of us don't do it because we intend to. It's just that's the messaging that keeps getting thrown at us. So something to pay attention to. When we eat these foods, what are the feelings that we get? I'm a terrible person. I'll always be fat. This is why I'm gaining so much weight, because I eat bad food. I'm going to share an example. I talked about my experience. When I moved to Canada over 10 years ago, the messaging was avoid palm oil at all costs. Don't eat palm oil. It's filled with saturated fats. It's going to clog your pores and then you're going to die. That was the messaging. Of course, I went to nutrition school, and there again, the messaging continued. There was all that information. I stopped cooking food with palm oil. And I remember then I would try to, make canola oil, because I already had a little bit of training in that. After living in Grand Prairie for a while, I knew how to get red out of canola oil. Like I would cook tomatoes and the oil would be red. But the food didn't taste the same. So I thought, well, I'll just manage. I'll just, ignore palm oil. But it wasn't the same. Gradually, I stopped eating my traditional soups. I wasn't even feeding my kids that, even though we wanted it. I was that person who would go to parties and I'm just like eating all the soup because that's something that I wasn't eating at home. Even my husband after a while was like, okay, seriously, when are we going to just like adjust and go back to what we eat? Because it wasn't working. So not only was I living in fear, but I was also getting rid of a part of my culture, something that made me unique, something that I could pass on to my children to say, when you have your own kids, and as we continue to grow up, because they're the first generation Canadians here, what are you going to tell your kids if they ask you, oh, can you tell us about our grandparents and our people that came here? What would you tell them? What would they have to tell them? Would I remember that we had lots of palm trees growing up at home and we always made our own palm oil at home? What about the stories of when I would help my parents to wash the palm fruits? All those stories, all those memories were wrapped up. It wasn't just so much about the palm oil itself. So I had to have a come to Jesus moment. And I was like, look, if palm oil is going to hurt me, then I guess we'll find out. I started going back to reintroducing palm oil. And wouldn't you know, in 2013, Dr. Oz came out and talked about palm oil is going to help you live longer. And all of a sudden, everybody was selling palm oil. Everybody was saying, yes, this miracle oil. And I'm thinking, what? This is something I grew up with. It's just like I see people laughing here, but I'm sure you get what I'm saying. This used to be the terrible thing. And all of a sudden, because somebody came and said, oh, no, this is good. We should be eating it. And now I see palm oil in the organic food store. Most of them overpriced, which I'm really thankful for ethnic stores, because if we were not selling these in ethnic stores before palm oil became this in thing, a lot of us who grew up with this palm oil would not be able to afford it. Would you pay $30-something for a little jar of palm oil? Probably not. And if you did, you would probably try to see how you could stretch it, because that just sounds ridiculous. So that's my story. And that's why I say, if we're trying to meet somebody else's standard, we will always struggle. We will always feel like our bodies are not good enough. We will always feel like there's something wrong with me. And what do you think that does to God? What do you think he's sitting and thinking, wow, look at the people I created so wonderfully, so unique. And they're trying to fix what I already made okay. So I'm here to remind you, there's no ideal standard for food. We're all made differently. We respond to food in our own unique way. Are they indicators that we should be looking for? Absolutely. If you eat a food and you're allergic, obviously you'll know I shouldn't be eating that. If you eat a food and it causes stomach upsets and digestive issues, that's your body telling you this food doesn't work for you, don't eat it. I'm lactose intolerant, so I have to be careful when it comes to milk. Does that mean I don't eat milk? I have soy milk that I eat that doesn't have the lactose. If I want ice cream, I know I can only take a little bit, not too much, because if I eat too much, then I'm going to have a stomach ache. That is how we learn. That is how we decide what foods work for us, what foods don't. Not based on somebody saying this is how much you should eat. And if you eat way more than that, you need to exercise to get rid of that. So since there's no ideal, and a lot of us end up spending time chasing this ideal, what do we think we're doing? We're creating idols for ourselves. And what does the Bible tell us in Exodus 20, verse 3? You shall have no other gods before me. Because remember that cycle I talked about, the diet cycle, when you're busy focused on that cycle, your brain has no space to just get quiet in the word. Your brain has no space to say, okay, today I need to just be okay and pay attention to what God is saying. You decide to go on a fast and all you can think of is food. Because that's something that is scarce to you right now. I'm just going to go ahead and talk about Jeremiah 31, verse 3. The Lord appeared to us in the past saying, I have loved you with an everlasting love. I have drawn you with unfailing kindness. This is God's word for us. He has chosen us and he loves us already. Eating perfectly and looking a certain way is not going to satisfy the deep need that we're looking for. So let's move on to struggle number 2. We're all looking for rest. We live in a chaotic world. There's so much stress going on between our homes, of course, now we're in a pandemic, trying to, have kids that are going to school online, figuring out, do I go out today? Is there going to be a shutdown? There's so much going on. As a result, we don't have moments to rest. And food has become this thing that we all run to. It's our escape. So you find at the end of the day, you just open up a bag of maybe popcorn or chips, and you're like, oh, I just need to eat this. I'll feel better. And we feel like we've rested, but we haven't really. We're trying to make food become this thing that it was never meant to do. Again, that guilt cycle, that dieting cycle kicks in because now you start to feel guilty. Oh, I should know better. I shouldn't be eating this way. And then we start to rely on food rather than face our problems. So you're so tense, you're so exhausted and tired, rather than speaking up, rather than looking for help and support, you shove down your feelings. And that's when emotional eating starts to kick in because something has to be done to address those emotions. At the end of the day, we're just looking for rest. Food can't do that for us. Let's quickly move on to the third thing. We're seeking control. This ties into the previous one. Our bodies need moments of rest. And for some of us, when that rest isn't coming, we try to organize. We try to grab things. We try to see what can we hold on to just make us feel like we're human. Again, the mindset comes, if you can just do this one thing, then you have control over your life. Then your life will be better, right? So we think if I can just lose weight, then my husband will love me more. Oh, if my wife can just lose weight, then I'll love her more. That's not the problem. That's not the solution. If I just exercise a little bit more, then my kids will notice that I'm living a healthy life and they'll join me. That's not the solution. It distracts us from facing the deeper issues and trying to see what's at the root of our behaviors. What are we really struggling with? So if we know that these are the problems, what then is the solution? I talked about diets. This is what we're sold. And this is just a few. Maybe you can recognize some of these names. Were sold cleanses, detoxes, healthy plans. So Whole30, there's paleo, there's keto. Now Noom is considered a lifestyle. Slim Fast, Weight Watchers, that's now called WW, Jenny Craig Nutrisystem. These are some of the few popular diets that we know of. And if you've ever been on a diet, I have a question for you. How is that working out? How is that helping you? Because usually we have the mindset, oh, this is going to help me get on track. I just need to do this 21-day cleanse and I'll be good. And then you do the 21-day cleanse. Things don't really work out the way you think. You might lose a little bit of weight because, again, our bodies will adjust. But what happens after the 21 days? It's a question for you. Think about it. When we do these plans, these diet patterns, we get into this mindset where things are black and white. You know, there's no in between. It's either I'm eating rice or I'm not eating rice. It's either my children can have candy or they can't have candy. It's either I'm eating salad or I'm not. I remember I actually had a presentation once and I asked people, what does a healthy food look like? And everyone pointed to the salad. No one pointed to soup and swallow. And I thought, oh, okay. This is really unfortunate. Because when you think about food, for me, growing up in Nigeria, we don't do food as a single item. Food always comes in a mix. In a mix, food comes in context. So when you have soup and swallow, what's in your soup? There are vegetables, probably some meat, some fish in there. You have your oil. It's all part of a balanced diet. But somebody said the salad was way better than the soup and swallow. And it's not their fault. Even I, before I learned this, would have thought the same thing. I did think the same thing. I just told you about my palm oil story. This is what I really want us to think about, because if we don't start to challenge the things that we're thinking about food, nothing really is going to change when it comes to our behavior, because at the root, our beliefs are still the same, that there's a good way to eat and a bad way to eat. So if you go on these diets, over time you think, oh, I have self-control, and you become very conscious. But then you start to fixate on things that you normally wouldn't. And over time, life starts to shrink, right? There are some foods you can no longer eat. And because you can no longer eat that, you don't really feel comfortable hanging out or being around the people who eat that way. So when they invite you to parties, you might say, oh no, I think I'll pass on this one. And that's because you're afraid that you're going to lose control when you go there. If it's in your home, you no longer eat with your family because you don't want to lose control. You feel like you have to be the one to control everything, because if you let go, then you don't know what's going to happen. So we try to control. And I want to remind you that control is rooted in fear, because we don't know what the future holds. So we try to hold on to what we know, hoping that things will change by our own power. But that's not the solution. We know we don't control our future. We know that these bodies are just temporary vehicles. So why do we put so much effort into controlling and trying to fix and trying to make it fit into what we think it should be? I'll tell you why. Because diets and restrictive eating and exercising, they appear safe. It's predictable, you know? You have a number that you need to meet. That's the number you aim towards. There's a clear target. This is the size you should be. This is how much food you should eat so you can measure. There's a standard, right? So you do everything possible to get to that target. Those who have been on diets can testify to this, but it's never enough. It's never enough, because that's not what God called us to. God called us to freedom and trust. And I'm going to quickly recap here before we go into um, the action steps. I'm reminding you that you're not alone. The big issues that we're seeing, the need for control, the need to belong, seeking rest, we're not going to find them in restricting foods. We're not going to find them when we're fighting our bodies. They only lead to guilt and shame. God has called us to rest. Matthew 11:28-30 tells us that. It tells us that. So then what is the solution? It all comes down to our thoughts and our beliefs. The only way you can cultivate a healthy mindset around food and your body is by paying attention to what you're thinking and what you believe about food, what you believe about food and your body. Because you need to recognize that we all have freedom. It's a free world. But with freedom comes a lot of responsibility. And that means that we have to rewire what we think we believe. And in my practice, I always tell the ladies, we have to remember that our bodies are just vehicles for us to experience life. They're just earthly vehicles through which we experience life. So we don't need to fixate so much on them. We can trust, do our best, and always come back to how are we feeling. And then focus on the things that God has actually put us on the earth to do. So I'm just going to share one more scripture with you. This is 1 Corinthians 10:23. I have the right to do anything, you say, but not everything is beneficial. I have the right to do anything, but not everything is constructive. Right? So you have the freedom, but you have to choose. What are you willing to believe? What are you willing to think? Which brings me to the next thing. What is mindset? Our mindsets are those set of assumptions and methods and notions that are held by one or more group of people. It can be from your worldview about things. It's the lens through which you see things. It's the lens through which you look at things. So this is what dictates how we live through the world. And if our mindset is dictating how we see things, then it's very important for us to start to pay attention to the things that we're thinking. But you know the problem? Humans have an average of 6,000 thoughts every single day. Now, for the good thing about this is most of them, we don't even know they're there. Like, how do you know you need to jump off when a car is coming towards where you're standing? You don't just, it's not even something you think twice about. It just happens automatically, which is a good thing. But on the other side of that is the thoughts that control our food choices, the thoughts that control how we see our bodies are also running at the back of our minds. I talked about mindset. Your mindset is shaped by what you grew up with. It's shaped by your perspective, how you see life. So those thoughts are running at the back of your mind. Sometimes you don't even know why you do something. It's because there's something playing at the back of your mind. And this is what I'm calling us to. How can we start being responsible for those thoughts? How can we start to choose them intentionally? That's what we're going to talk about now. Your thoughts are an interpretation of circumstances around you. So all of you can see here that there's a glass of water. If I asked some of you, how much water do you think there? Is it half empty or is it half full? Some people will probably say it's half full. Other people will say it's half empty. Those are the thoughts that they're having about this glass of water. The fact is, this is a glass of water. Is it half full? Is it half empty? It's open to interpretation. That's your thought. And that thought could be someone who is more pessimistic, they don't really think good things happen in life. They might say it's half empty because they tend to see things negatively. Someone who is more optimistic, who likes to see the positive, they're very excited about life, they might say, oh, it's half full. So that's a good thing. Again, that doesn't change the fact that the glass has water in it. That's the truth. That's the truth. Now, whatever you choose to think about it, it's your choice. So now we've established what our mindsets are. We've established what thoughts are. What's the first thing that you can do when it comes to food and your body? You need to examine and challenge the beliefs that you have. Start by making a list of these thoughts. I am, I should, I always, I never, right? There are all these things going on in our heads. I never eat right. I should not eat this food. It's bad for me. I'll never stop being addicted to sugar. That's a good one. I shouldn't waste food. That's another one that a lot of us struggle with. I shouldn't waste food because people are starving, so I need to eat it. Even though your body is telling you, I've had enough. You just, I can't. I need to eat it. Next thing, where did those thoughts come from? Remember, I talked about our mindset, how it's shaped by a lot of our perspectives. Some of us, it might be history. Where did those thoughts come from? I'll quickly share one. I should never waste food. That was my thing. And that thought came from growing up in a house where I was a picky eater and my mom was like, you can't be wasting food. So even if when I was full, I didn't know I could keep the food to eat later, I would just keep eating. And I'd eat past the point of fullness and I'd be so stuffed. But my brain was telling me I shouldn't waste food. That was my own struggle. If you believe that you shouldn't do something, then chances are that's always going to guide your actions, whether or not you're conscious about it. If you believe that eating carbs will make you fat, which is a very common one that we hear about, rice always tends to be the victim. If you believe that eating white rice will make you fat, then you're always going to have a problem with rice. Doesn't matter what happens. Next one. Are those thoughts and beliefs the truth about you and God's ability? Going back to our glass scenario, we know that a truth, no one argues with it. That's the fact. There's water in the glass. That's the truth. Whether it's half full, whether it's half empty, depends on your thought. And your thought is shaped by your perspective, your beliefs. No one argues with the truth, but people can argue with your thoughts. Someone can tell you, no, I think it's half empty. And then you go back and forth. Both of you might be right. Because at the end of the day, the truth is there's water in the glass. So what does God tell us about our identity? We belong to Christ. We are fearfully and wonderfully made. That's the truth. And because we're fearfully and wonderfully made, our bodies are wise enough to know what to do with the food that we eat. Going back to that $67 billion industry, they thrive on fear. And because fear is such a strong human emotion, when someone tells you that if you don't eat this way, you're going to develop all these diseases and then you're going to die. Because that's our biggest fear is we're going to die. So what does that do for us? We get afraid. We do, oh, no, I can't. I don't want to die. Is that really true? Is that really true? We're God's children. You have your Bible. You can open your Bible and see what God's word says. If your body is fearfully and wonderfully made, should you really be helping? Someone will say, oh, do a detox. It'll help your liver. It'll help your liver. But God created the liver to be responsible enough and good enough to help you clear your body by itself. You don't need help to cleanse your body. That's what your liver is there for. How about paying attention to the emotions that you have around food? So we talked about our thoughts, and our emotions are impacted by our thoughts. So let's say you show up somewhere, you show up in a restaurant. Remember, let's use the scenario I shared at the beginning. When you show up in a room and you're looking around and you want to see a face that's familiar. If you see someone that you're not familiar with, or nobody recognizes you, right away you start to feel afraid. You start to get anxious. And because you're anxious, it'll probably be difficult for you to decide where to sit. And if you can't decide where to sit, if you're anything like me or how I used to be before, I just go out the door. I run away because I can't deal with it. But if you go and you open the door and everyone's like, hey, we were waiting for you, right away you feel welcome. You want to go in there. That's the same thing. When your food comes in front of you, what are the emotions that come up? What are the emotions that come up for you? When you see this, what is the emotion that comes right away? Ooh, cheese, fat. Some people might think that. Other people might think, ooh, it's yummy. Same thing, it's pizza. That's the fact. Your thoughts, dependent on you. Some people might see this, ooh, this is yummy. Others might think, oh, that's not enough food for me. How about this one? Aha! What are the emotions that come up? Or this one? Ooh. How about this one? What are the emotions that come up? What about this one? They're all food. It all boils down to what are the emotions that come up for you when you see these foods. So, for instance, some of us might eat past feeling comfortably full because we've been restricting. So, when we see foods like this, remember I told you I was the one who would be in parties and I'm just like at the table eating the soup because I was restricting myself. And I knew that if I didn't eat the soup now, I probably won't get to eat soup again. What if you thought differently? What if when food came in front of you, rather than feeling like you need to run away, rather than feeling afraid, you start to think, this food sounds delicious. It looks delicious. Maybe you might start incorporating foods that you actually want to eat, foods that you enjoy. For me, I had to change my mindset from palm oil is bad and go to what actually do I want to eat? Which I'm glad I did because my kids were still young then. So now they've adjusted their taste buds and they're eating foods that I grew up eating. Sometimes they eat it even more than the westernized foods that I make. What about the foods that you eat and you think, oh, I'm good for eating this way, or I'm bad? What if you could take out the good and bad from the food and just see food as food? For the moms out there, what do you see as the food that's right for breakfast, the food that's right for lunch, the food that's right for dinner, the food that's right for snacks? We have all these little labels that we give the foods. And then we're struggling. Oh, I can't give my child cereal. That was me. Before we moved to the Northwest Territories, my husband, that was 3 years ago, my husband was working here for about 6 months or so. I was just newly postpartum and my kid just started kindergarten. So I had 2 kids in school. I had another baby. Most days by 6 o'clock, I was ready for bed, but I would be at the kitchen trying to make dinner because in my head, dinner had to be made from scratch. And God forbid that I give them breakfast items for dinner. So I would have to make maybe things like rice or pasta or potatoes. And one day I thought, you know what? This doesn't make sense. So I just said, I'll test. I let my kids, I said, we're going to have cereal for dinner today. I'll never forget it. My first daughter, Annika, she was like, yes, one less thing for you to do. Now you can stop freaking out about dinner. That's what my daughter said to me. That's the day we decided cereal, we can have cereal anytime we want. So if you could start thinking differently about how foods come into your family, how you incorporate foods, instead of calling something, we only eat it for breakfast, why not it's just food? If that's what you have available, why not eat it? Rather than putting yourself in this box and starting to feel guilty and all these negative emotions come through. Because when we're eating and there are negative emotions around us, trust me, that food is not going to satisfy you. That's why you'll eat a whole bowl of food that on a regular day, you're satisfied. But because you have negative emotions around that time, you'll finish that and you'll still want something else to eat. Right? Going back to those deeper needs that we have, the the food didn't satisfy that need. So you still want more, something to bring pleasure. So I want to invite you to redefine what a healthy relationship with food means to you. Think about all the mental energy, all the money, all the time that you spend on pursuing the ideal health. How is that impacting you? How is that impacting your finances? How is that impacting you, the way you respond to your kids when they ask you for candy or juice? Do you go away? You can't have that. It's bad for you. Blah, 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 blah. And we're yelling and we're screaming. What if you just thought, okay, well, that sounds nice. We could have it with our food and you see how it goes. Think about the impact, and this will help you to redefine what eating food or having a healthy relationship looks like. What would not attaching a moral value to food look like to you? Secondly, let go of the need for control. What would eating in a way that feels good to you feel like? Think about your parents, your grandparents, the people that came way before you. How did they do? They still ate, they still survived. They probably didn't need diets or detoxes or restrictive eating patterns. They just trusted that the body that God created knew what to do with the food. What is currently keeping you away from doing that? Why is it difficult for you to honor your body's signals of hunger and fullness and satisfaction? What is one way that you can let go of that need today? What's one thing you can do? Trust your body's wisdom. Next, I want to invite you to bring mindfulness to food and eating. You've chosen to think differently about your foods. You've chosen to redefine what healthy relationship with food and your body looks like. Bring mindfulness back to food and eating. And let's see some examples. You can practice gratitude for food. I remember growing up and we would be advised you need to pray before you eat, give thanks to God. We've lost that culture. A lot of us just see food and we just start eating. There's no gratitude. There's no paying attention. It's just like, okay, let's just eat and move on. Like food is a means to an end. How about planning for eating? If you know that your life is chaotic, you need to plan. We plan for our businesses to succeed. A business will start at the beginning of the year and they have plans. Why can't you plan for eating with your family? It doesn't need to be this elaborate thing. Plan, even if it's just for tomorrow, what are we going to eat? So that takes away some of that mental stress. Okay, it would be nice to eat this and that. Okay, let's see how we can apply that. Again, if you live with a family, always important to get everyone to give their opinion because we all want everyone to be happy. And pay attention while you're eating. We're so busy, half the time we're not even paying attention to our foods. You need to bring attention back. Gratitude evokes positive feelings. And again, when you have those positive emotions while you're eating, it makes the food taste way better. And you feel better satisfied because your body is just like, this is what I needed. Think about the God who created the food. If he took the time to create the trees and take care of the lilies and a sparrow, have you ever seen a sparrow? It's so tiny and very insignificant. But God pays attention. How much more you? How much more you? Pay attention. Now, I want to remind you that a healthy mindset around food and your body is possible. It boils down to what we've talked about. Those deeper desires that we're trying to fill, what is it about it? How might you change your mindset now that you know all this information? What is no longer serving you? I really invite you to challenge what you believe. Is it really serving you? Those beliefs, what are they doing to you? If you're struggling to know where to start, I want to invite you to sit with it for a while. Take out a pen and paper or a journal, write what comes up for you. Those questions, you can go back to them. Perhaps what you just need to do is plan your meals. For moms, especially because, of course, we're not paying attention. We wake up and we just out the bed And we run around the house, run around the day like hamsters on a wheel. And at the end of the day, we just crash. What if you actually took the time to plan and include eating as part of self care for yourself? Maybe you can ask your kids, Mommy just needs 5 minutes to eat. Go play. 5 minutes away from you is not going to kill them. But 5 minutes away from you will give you the time to calm down and actually eat and let the food settle so that you have the energy to chase them again. Pick one area you'd like to work on. Write what you're grateful for when it comes to your meals. Remember to just pray about your body. Your body is always helping you. That's the one thing I want you to remember. Our bodies are not the enemy. You can have that healthy mindset. You can live without the diets, without the detoxes and all those things. And depending on how long you've been disconnected, it may take some work, but you have to give yourself grace. You have to give yourself compassion. Be gentle with yourself, especially if you've been doing that, acting that way for a long time. So that's it. I just want to remind you that the work is possible. Again, these are the places that you can reach out to me. My business is Olive and Bliss Wellness. I'm at Olive and Bliss Wellness on Facebook and Instagram. My podcast is the Thriving Mom Podcast. It's a weekly podcast. New episodes air every Sunday on all podcast platforms. And if you think you want to go deeper in this work, I would invite you, reach out to me, send me an email, and we can chat. Like it was already talked about at the beginning, I do support moms in one-on-one coaching. I've also worked with people who are not moms as well, because this is such an important work. And I always find that every time when the moms finally get it, things change. Their relationships start to change. They're no longer stressed out, and things start to change in their marriages. Kids feel a lot calmer at home. Do it for yourself. You can do this work yourself. All right, I think that's pretty much everything I wanted to say. So thank you very much for listening. I really appreciate your audience, and I pray that whatever you heard here today will resonate with you, and you'll find the strength that you need to just make the changes to help you start chasing God's purpose and will for your life. Thank you.
Wow, wow. It's about mindset. You know, thank you very much for the presentation. Uh, I know we usually go from one to two, but today because we have a special guest, you know, if you have any question, you can just unmute yourself and ask. Just let's ask her. Just know that we are, broadcasting this live on Facebook and YouTube. So you can, if you don't want your voice to be heard, you can send a chat and I will echo your voice. But let's just talk about it. I'm so glad that you're able to again call our attention. And in this organization, that's what we've been doing this year, and that's what we've been talking about. Is about mindset, changing our mindset. Just looking at things differently from another perspective, because we don't want anything to hold us back from enjoying life. You know, uh, you are created to enjoy life, and that that is the best form of abundance mindset. Is that you are created to enjoy life. Enjoy food. Food is spiritual. Many of us think that food is not spiritual. Food is spiritual because that's the only way we can take care of our body. That's God designated way to take care of your body is to eat, not to starve, to eat. But now when we begin to have issues with what we eat and our emotions, our feelings are not aligned with his God's intention and purpose for food and our body, then we become a problem, because food is the fuel of the body. Just like you have gas for your car, you know, food is the fuel of the body. If you are not properly eating well, which again, like you said, is you got to define what wellness means for you. Nobody can do that for you. So I'm going to be quiet now, just open the floor for people to talk. If you have any question, if you can just type your email address, on the screen and share it with us again so that people can ask one-on-one question with you, that would be fantastic. So I'll open it up for people to talk. Just your reaction, what stood out for you, and let's take it from there in the next 10 minutes so that we wrap up and give our time to go do mom of three. So, all right. So thank you.
All right, thank you. Sorry, how do you pronounce your name again? Is it Ian?
We
Sorry.
may.
Women. Okay, that was a awesome presentation. I really enjoyed the idea of allowing our body to dictate what we should consume, which is the ultimate uh, natural way to consume food. But I just have a question when it regards to how can we balance between living the absolute control for the body and being able to also take control of ourselves. What I mean by taking control of ourselves is sometimes some people, maybe we are addicted to certain kind of food, especially the kids, and they just don't want to take anything else apart from just having snacks, right? So how can we balance the control there? Or can we say for kids they just want to have snacks, so they don't, the body doesn't really need other fruits or food. So should we just leave the whole thing to them? Okay, this is what your body wants. So I just want a little bit of clarification on that when it comes to the balance and not having control, things like that. And my second part is sometimes it depends on when it comes to mindset, the way you are brought up, right? The kind of meals, some people they don't have that luxury of having that kind of good diet, so they might be used to that kind of lifestyle, and their body just adjusts to that. Becomes this just my mindset. I don't even take maybe breakfast, or I just have a light meal. Might not be the right nutrition for them growing up, but we just get used to it. So how can we balance between having the right diet and having a balanced diet and the control? So I don't know if you understand my question. So
Thank you. And I'm laughing because the first question that you asked is so classic of parents, and it's always from a good place. So as parents, we are brought up, or we have this ideal that we are ultimately in control of our kids and how their bodies turn out. That's not true. We don't have control over our kids' bodies. We don't have control over how their bodies turn out. What we have control over is our roles when it comes to feeding. So, one of the things I talk to the moms in my program is that parents have a role in providing the structure for feeding. So, what I mean by structure, what are the times that you typically serve meals? What are the kinds of meals that you're serving in your home? And then, what are you providing? That is the control that you have. That's as much control as you have. Now, the children have control over how much they eat and whether or not they choose to eat. Really tough for parents to hear, but that's the truth. And I'll tell you why. Because every one of us was born with the ability to know when we've had too much, when we're hungry. So for a baby who is born, you'll see a baby would usually, when they start feeling hungry, those first few days, either they suck on their thumb or they might start to nibble on their lower lip. And that's how you tell that they're hungry. Now, if a mom is breastfeeding, or even if she's using a bottle, what does the baby do when they're full? They start to turn their head. If a mom is paying attention, she'll catch the cue and she'll stop. But if she's not paying attention, or she has the mindset, again, going back to the mindset that she knows how much that child needs, she'll keep feeding the baby. So over time, if the mom is the mom who doesn't listen and still thinks, I know how much this child needs, and keeps feeding the baby learns, it doesn't really matter what I think. My mom knows better. So then that child grows up with the mentality of they don't know how to tell when they're full or they don't know the right kinds of foods. But a mom who actually pays attention will know to stop. That baby knows now, my mom is listening. So if I want to stop eating, I just need to turn my face. As they get older, maybe they'll push, right, to stop. When it comes to the food, now a lot of kids, when they get to that toddler age, usually when you start bringing in solid foods, when they start to crawl or walk, food is not the first thing on their mind because they're trying to discover so many things. And this is usually the stage where a lot of us parents interrupt that natural ability for children to eat and know what they need, because children no longer pay attention to food. Right now, they're trying to discover what's going on in their environment. And that is why I said we need to know our roles when it comes to feeding. So if you know your role, that your role is, we usually have breakfast at whatever time it is for your family. We usually have lunch, whatever time. And during lunch, this is what we serve. You set that structure from that very young age. So the child comes to expect it. They might not eat at that time. And then what we find a lot of parents do is they try to pressure. So parents can say, they can threaten the child, I'm going to spank you, you're not going to have your toy, or you won't get ice cream. You're teaching the child now that food and eating will always be a fight. But the thing we don't realize is during that age as well, they're trying to establish their autonomy. They're trying to decide, who am I in this world? So when we don't listen, they dig in deeper. They try to press because they want to show that I am a person and you need to listen. And then food becomes a fight. But if you're the parent who knows, okay, I just need to provide structure, leave them to do what they need to do, you start to listen. And over time, the children will eat. Science tells us it takes at least over 20 tries for children to like foods. So when they're growing up, vegetables are not really things that children like because vegetables have a little bit of a subtle, bitter taste. Many of us don't recognize it, but if you have a child that really has a strong sense of taste, they can tell. So what I always encourage parents to do is, if your child has passed that stage, now you need to go back and give them the permission. Tell them, I've learned something new. I want you to be able to eat. So how can I support you? I don't want you to be eating, these snacky foods, which I don't really like that name. Just call the food whatever the name is. I don't want you to be eating cookies all the time because you're not going to be full. The cookies are not going to keep you full. This is why you're always hungry. Let them see how the food is impacting their lives, not based on it's unhealthy or healthy. If they have cookies, they're going to be hungry every couple of minutes because there's really nothing in the cookies. So remind them, oh, because you didn't eat this thing else, this is why you're hungry. Okay, can we have the cookies with whatever else you're serving? When it comes to candy, you need to let them be exposed to it. Bring it into your home. Okay, you get to choose how much candy you want to eat. We'll eat it with dinner and leave it for them. I have a child who loves chocolate, and that's what she wants every day for dinner. So we'll bring chocolate and we'll have dinner. Sometimes she'll eat the chocolate, then she'll eat her food. Other times she'll eat half the chocolate, eat her food, go back to her chocolate, come back to her food. We're always in a rush. Slow down. Don't always run. Okay, we need to get going 5 minutes and we're done. No, take the time, sit with them, let them do that. That's how you help and support them. As a parent, you're going to be afraid. You're going to be anxious. You need to remind yourself that their bodies know what they need to do. You create the structure, provide the food, and let them do what they need. Did that answer that question for you?
Yes. Yeah, I think that creating a structure is the best control we can have, rather than just say, okay, this is the kind of thing. So it does, clarify that. Yeah, thank you.
And you will know that if you don't do that, what happens is when you go out, your child will be that child that wants to hide in somebody's party and eat all the cookies because they don't get it at home. Yeah. It happened to my kids because I used to be that parent too. Now, your second question about people may be used to eating good or bad food. Going back to the mindset, what does good food mean? What does bad food mean? Where is that coming from? What does bad mean? right? So we all have to define, what does that mean for you? Some people, they need a heavy breakfast. Something as light as pancakes might not support them. They might need something like swallow in the morning. It all comes back to, what does your body need? So that one, I would ask that you dig a little bit deeper into that and rethink what good breakfast or lunch or dinner meal looks like. And then think about what works for you and do that. Thank you.
Yeah, so yeah, just to expand sheet on that good and bad. I mean, nutritious food. I mean, for example, a certain part of the world where they have this poverty, where they're not getting, the body's asking for this, but they're not actually getting it. And if they continue to live that way for the next 10 years, 20 years, they just get used to just, the body's just going to adjust to what you're actually supplying it, right? And so how do you balance between, and the moment they get to a position where they have that luxury to be able to take that balanced diet and nutritious food, they don't just want to take it because they're not just used to it, because their body's already adjusted to that. That's what I'm just trying to say there. That how do you not say, okay, yeah, you need to take these, for example, you need to take fruit, or maybe someone comes to you and you just discover that you're lacking in this nutrient in your body, you need to take this, but I don't want to take it because I'm just used to what I'm used to. So that's what I'm trying to.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying that. So in that case, I would say the first thing, if someone has been in a place where perhaps there might have been scarcity, one of the things is there's always that fear of control, fear of the unknown. So that person needs to work through that. Because the thing is, when most times at the root of that, it's, if I let myself go and start eating these other foods, I know they're good for me, but I won't control myself. So there's that one. And then secondly, I would invite that person to check with their healthcare provider to see if they're actually lacking in nutrients. Because the good thing about the body is, when you lack nutrients, it tries to compensate by working biologically to fix that. It's only when it gets to a place where it actually needs more, then you start to see the symptoms. So I would check with your medical care provider first. And if there's actually a problem, sometimes they might need to go on, have some supplements just to help them in the meantime. And then when it comes to the food, what is the littlest thing that they can add? Remember, I talked about some people think healthy food is all about eating salads. What if you don't want to eat salads because you didn't grow up with eating greens? Are there other ways you can get the vitamins and minerals from other foods? There are some leaves that still give you that. If you like vegetable soup, there are some vegetables you can add. It's all about adding in, not taking things out. What is one thing you can eat? If it's fruits that you don't like, okay, what is it about the fruit? Is it the texture? Okay, what is the texture that you prefer? Perhaps you can find a texture that's similar to what you eat at home. I used to eat bananas growing up in Nigeria. I don't eat bananas a lot here because the texture to me is different. But I eat other fruits. So what can you find that would help you to still be able to bring that? Even if it's one fruit, you don't need all the fruits. You just need one. And you start there. Okay, this is what I like about it. This is what I don't. Then you try something else. And you have to get comfortable and know that this is going to be a challenge for you, but be comfortable with trying it out. You try it out, it doesn't work, try something else. And then that's how you build on it. And don't feel the pressure to do it just because this is what's considered healthy. Again, it has to come back to the mindset. If you're eating those foods out of fear that you're deficient in something, it's not going to help. So you have to train your mind that this is something new. I'm probably going to be worried about it, but I'm willing to give it a try. Does that help?
Yeah, that's good. Thank you.
Yeah.
Do we have any other questions before we call it a day? While you're still thinking, I'd like to invite you 2 weeks time. We are bringing another person, a therapist in, and we want to talk about shame. we start along with this because many of us, we are not eating for fun, for enjoyment. And we're trying to, the society want to shame us. And they want to say this is bad, this is bad. Looking bulky is bad. When I was growing up, when you are bulky, that is evidence of good living. But now, when you're bulky or fat, they call it sickness. You know. But I know there's some healthy fat and there's some, God will help us. So I want to encourage you to join us again in 2 weeks' time as we talk about shame in different dynamics. I'm bringing a friend of mine. I've known him since I've been here in Canada, and he's a therapist. Very smart guy, very very smart. So it's going to complement that. We're going to see how we can tie it out, up with with the food aspect of it, and then we continue as we continue on our project. It's a year-long project on dealing with mindset. Many of our mindsets have been limiting, and we want to help us free. Want to educate so that you can just enjoy life. Life, even if you live 120 years, it's still short compared to eternity. So the time you spend here, spend it enjoying yourself. There's something I learned before we close. I learned about French culture. I don't know whether they are still practicing, but in the old French culture, they actually enjoy food. They don't eat for 15 minutes. They eat for hours on end. So that food is enjoyment to them. And then, now there's this research that I watched about if you have the tendency of eating too much, maybe readjust your plate. Maybe you need to go buy smaller plate if you have the tendency of overeating, and then you bring inconvenience to your body. If you always now let me say this now, if you always overfeed yourself, it's going to be very difficult for you to hear God because your body will be uncomfortable. At night you can't sleep well because it's not the devil that is not making you to sleep well. Your body, like I said, your body knows when it's right, the right quantity of food that you need to eat. And if you are overfeeding it, it's going to be very comfortable. You can't sleep well, you can't play well, you'll be bopping almost all the time. Body will not just function well. It's not going to be right. The frequency will not be right. Your body has a rhythm that it needs to maintain. And let's just enjoy life, enjoy food, eat with your family. Don't always, like she said, don't always be picking, don't always be picking, okay, she's correcting me now. You say no need for small plates. You say addressing let me read that so that I will wrap up. You said addressing the mindset helps with knowing what the right amount is. No need for small plates. Okay, well, I changed my mind. I repent. I repent now. So no need, don't bother, don't listen to me, guys. Don't listen to me. Don't listen to me. Did I just close it? No, I don't think so. So guys, don't listen to me about that. Don't listen. Just listen to the expert in the house. Don't listen to me, guys. Don't listen to me. But let's work on that. Just enjoy. Enjoy food with your family. And I know there's COVID restriction where you can't visit people, but just enjoy food with the people that even if you are eating by yourself, enjoy it. That's where the mindfulness comes in. Just feel the taste of the food and let your body be glad that you are feeding it well. I don't know if you have any last thing to say to us, UI, before we wrap it up for today.
No, I actually just want to say thank you very much for your audience. I really enjoyed being here and sharing that with you. And I'm happy for the work that you're doing because addressing the mindsets, really, that's what it comes down to. So I'm just excited to see how people apply this. And please feel free to reach out to me and let me know how your journey is going. I always love people chatting with me, even if it's just asking questions. You don't have to be a client. I can answer your question or direct you to the right place. But I'm really thankful for just having this opportunity. So thank you.
And our email address is hello@olive holandbliss.ca. HELLO at OLIVEANDBLISS.ca. So you can reach out to her, uh, you know, ask a question and she will be able to answer. It's always good to know who to talk to, even with mindset too. Talk to the right people. Enjoy yourself. And until next time, stay connected, stay inspired, and stay empowered. All right, see you next time. Have a good one.